So we are here again for another episode of Ask Dr. Joe. Dr. Joe Sertich, who's the Curator of Dinosaurs with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, is joining us from, where are you at?
I am in a new lab, so this is one of our other labs that you haven't seen yet, here at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science in Denver, Colorado.
Nice. So the last time that we spoke, Pops was still in the lab window at the end of Prehistoric Journey at the museum, and you guys were just kind of wrapping up the final touches after you kind of cleaned up Pops and all the other fossils that were in those boxes. Tell us what's been happening since then.
Yeah, so since we last talked, we finished the prep. So the preparation process where we removed all of the old plaster and all the other materials that were filling the cracks, and largely removing a ton of matrix. So the sandstone that Pops was buried in was still crammed in all of its different cavities in the eyes, up into the brain case, into the mouth. And so all of that's now clean. You can see what's left of the teeth of Pops. You can see a lot more detail on like the snout right here. Things that were obscured by all that plaster and rock. So it's now clean. It's down here in this lab waiting for the next step. And so it's getting ready to be packed and hopefully shipped off soon to be molded and cast and turned into a really amazing reconstructed skull. So we'll have a complete fabricated skull of Pops with all the distortion pulled out. So the horns will be straightened back to their life position. The missing parts of the frill, so you can see back here where the shield is missing, we'll fill that in. And we'll have to reconstruct parts of Pops that weren't preserved. And so there's parts of the frill, especially the middle part, that just didn't preserve well. And so we'll have to reconstruct what that probably looked like based on other Triceratops specimens.
So when you talk about the casting and the reconstruction, you're talking about a full skull.
Yeah, that's right. So it'll go in, it'll get a complete mold, it'll be fully cast in a resin, that'll be restored and reconstructed in a basically a lifelike pose, and it'll be a complete skull that can be used for education or for display.
That's going to be so neat to see him. Right now we see half of him, so it'll be
Yeah.
neat to see a full head for Pops. I'm sure he'll appreciate that too.
And then once it's done, it can come back up to Greeley and be back on display for everyone to see up in Greeley.
That's going to be so fun, and we're going to have a big to-do. So when that comes back up here, we'll be sure to let everyone know. And there's lots of discussion going on. We're talking about parades. We're talking about maybe being escorted by local law enforcement. I mean, we're going to go all out because this is really exciting. And the other thing too I want to mention is that Weld County, thanks to Dr. Sertich, is going to get one of those casts as well. So thank you in the museum and to the gentleman who's going to be making the cast for doing that, because that's going to be something we can take out to our schools, to our Putter Learning Center, and really make Pops an educational focal point in Weld County, where anyone of any age, but particularly our school kids, can really learn about what used to be here in Weld County once upon a time. So that's really exciting, and I know we're really appreciative of you arranging for that. That's going to be a great addition. So of course we're thrilled to have Pops come back up here. That's the big thing, but then to be able to take a replica out into the community is going to be wonderful too. One thing that we were talking about and having people understand what Weld County looked like back then when Pops was out and about walking around. We've had a wonderful opportunity to share the work of a paleo artist, and I'm wondering if maybe you can talk to us a little bit about Andre and his work with Pops and his work with the museum.
Yeah, so we've been really lucky to work with an amazingly talented paleo artist, Andre Atuchin. He's a really good friend of ours here at the Denver Museum. We've been working with him way back, at least to 2012, when he did some artwork for us. We've had him out in the field. He's helped us dig some dinosaurs in Utah. And most recently, he's done an amazing series of artwork based on dinosaurs found here in Colorado. And one of those pieces is ancient Weld County. And so you can see it over Jennifer's shoulder there on the screen. you can see the beginnings of this artwork. So that's what Pops would have looked like 69 million years ago. And that's what Will County would have looked like. So this is based on information that we have from the locality of Pops. So you'll see when we release this image, there's a crocodile in the image. In the pieces of bones from the Pops site were chunks of crocodile skull. So that's based on real information. Lurking in the background, you'll see a T-Rex, and there's T-Rex fossils known from the Pops locality or the Pops region. And then the other parts of the scene, the plants and the landscape, are based on the geology. And so we have information from the plants of the Laramie Formation. We know that the trees in the scene look a lot like the fossils that we find. And then the low swampy water is a direct inference from the types of rocks that were deposited in the way that Pops was buried when Pops died.
It's so neat to watch the progression, and it was really interesting to learn about the technology that Andre's been using, because Andre lives in Russia, and so he doesn't have access to actually see Pops in person. So my understanding, and fill in the gaps for me, but you guys at the museum were able to take a lot of pictures and share those pictures from all different angles of Pops, and then he uses something I hadn't heard before, and I'm going to say it wrong, but photogrammetry. Is that how you say that?
Yeah.
And was able to put together a 3D model. And so if you're on our social media, you would have seen that progression and an explanation of how he does that. But it's very interesting and very high tech, which I thought was just pretty cool.
Yeah, and he's able to take that 3D model and then do what our fabricator is also going to do, and that was remove the distortion. So when Pops died and the skull was buried, it was buried on its side, and the whole skull got crunched, and so it's pretty flat from side to side, and the horns are kind of bent toward each other, almost touching in the middle. And so he was able to take that 3D model and pull it all back apart to what Pops' skull would have looked like, and then he digitally painted the flesh, the muscles and the skin and the scales over the surface of that digital model, and that's how we're very confident that the model that Andre Tuchin made is what Pops probably would have looked like 69 million years ago.
It's really exciting and a neat process, and thank you, Andre. Hopefully you get to see this when we put this up, but it's been fun to share that process along the way, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback. I gotta say, our Twitter following in the grand scheme of things is still small, but it exploded when I started tagging Andre. So he's obviously very, very popular in the world of paleo art, because it took off. I think we grew exponentially on Twitter. So that was fun, because I'm not good at Twitter. So that was helpful to me. So we have a couple questions that I want to throw out at you that have come in. But before we get to that, I wanted to let everyone know, and this is partly to hold me accountable as well, but Andre has showed us progressions of his work on Pops and the artwork, and you can see that on our social media sites, and I'll put that up on the Pops the Triceratops page on the Discover World website as well. But for a while, Dr. Joe and I have been talking about having an art contest, and so please look for next week information about how you can participate in the Pops art contest, and we're going to open that up to everybody. So whether you paint or you draw, you sculpt, you whatever, I don't care if it's Legos, if it's, I've got a few pictures of some things people have sent, and it's amazing what people do. So we really want to explore that, because I think one thing that's important is that we've talked with you and with Natalie and with Salvador about what does it take to do your job as paleontologists and fossil preparators, and it's a lot of science, which is fantastic. And some kiddos are really good at science, and some not so much, but still very interested in dinosaurs and prehistoric animals, and there's still a way to participate in that process, and one of them is through art. So we want to offer up an opportunity for everyone to show their artwork, and we will have more details coming. So please look next week for that, because I'm really excited, and I'm even more excited that Dr. Joe and Andre Tuchin are both agreed to be judges. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what everyone can put together for Pops. I think I might put an entry in myself.
Nice. Well, you did good on your pumpkin carving entry, so
Thank you.
you can do it. So let's jump real quick to a couple questions that came in over social media, and we're gonna have more of these. So if you have questions about Triceratops, about Pops, about this process, about the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, about how Weld County became the recipient of Pops, about the Mapelli family, please send them to us. You can email them to pops@discoverweld.com. And the first question we have actually has to do with this artwork here. This is the last one that I was posted on social media. So this is not the final one, but it's pretty detailed as far as Pops, and then it's starting to show some of the background. And so we had a question, which I was going to answer, and then I thought, you know what, maybe I better ask for sure because I'm just assuming. But the question is, so where is this? Is this in Greeley? Is it Denver? Or is it Russia where the artist is?
Yeah, so the artist, Andrei Tuchin, lives in Siberia in eastern Russia. But the scenes that he's been building are based on our backyard here in Colorado. So this is what ancient Greeley and Brigsdale, Colorado, up in Weld County, would have looked like between 68 and 69 million years ago. And so this is based on real information from the rocks. And so you can really be transported back in time by looking at a piece like this to what Pops' world looked like.
And it's just a little different than what it looks like today.
Just a little, yeah. Not as much skin brush.
All right, so I prepped Dr. Joe on this one before because I told him I am going to totally butcher most of the words in this question. But maybe you can help me with that and then help decipher what this gentleman's actually talking about here. So the question actually came again from one of the images that Andre shared with us and I posted on social media. But it says, so Pops has 20.
Epoxipitals?
Yes, exactly. 6 on the parietals, 6 per squamosal, and 1 crossing the parietal squamosal boundary.
Yes.
What does that mean?
I can show you. I've got the pieces here. So an epoxipital, I'll bring it up to the camera, are these little horns that are attached to the margin of the frill. So if you've ever looked at a Triceratops, it has these little triangular horns along the edge. And those are separate little floating bones in the skin that fuse onto the skull bone. And so those are called an epiossification, and an occipital is the back of the head. So they're called epoxipitals, kind of a combination of those two words. And if it's on the squamosal, or the bone that's coming off the cheek, or behind the cheek, then they're called episquamosals. And if they're on the parietal, the middle of the frill, they're called epiparietals. And so the number of these different bones, these little horns, on the sides of the frill are really important for us telling apart the different species of horned dinosaurs. And so for Pops, we were able to reconstruct that there are actually 7 episquamosals, so on the side of the frill. So coming up from the cheekbone all the way up to the where it meets the parietal, there are 7. So even though it kind of looks like that 7th is bridging the suture between the squamosal and the parietal, it's actually on the squamosal. And that's a pretty standard number. You see a similar number in a lot of other horned dinosaurs. And then for the parietal, we had to just speculate because we don't have the margin of the parietal. And so what we did was we went with the ancestral condition, and that is 3 on each half, so 6 total on the parietal. And that's what we see in earlier horned dinosaurs that are related to Triceratops. So dinosaurs like Pentaceratops or Utah Ceratops, they always have 3 and 3. So we just went with the very conservative 3 and 3. By the time you get to Triceratops in time, there are many more. So there's 5 and 5, and sometimes there's even what's called a 0, which is right in the center. But we didn't want to speculate that it was as advanced or what we call derived as a Triceratops. So we just went with a conservative number. But it's speculative, and that's where we have to fill in those gaps based on what we know from its ancestors.
That's so interesting. Thank you for explaining that. I had no idea when I saw that. Yeah, but that's very interesting. So thank you. So next steps are it heads over to the Western Slope. So we will be sharing information about that process once that happens. And we've got a lot of things in the hopper right now that we're working on. So stay tuned, because I think this will be a real fun summer of pops, if you will. We've got a lot of things, a lot of irons in the fire that will be coming together really quickly. So when I say that, I mean that we're going to do some more Ask Dr. Joe. We're going to have our art contest. We've talked about a poetry contest or a writing contest. We will have if you watch social media, you saw that I am now the proud owner, through my position in the county, of an inflatable Triceratops costume. So that will probably make some appearances here and there, working with our libraries. And so we've got a lot of ideas. We've got some events coming up. We're working on having a Dr. Joe do a virtual presentation down the road. So we've got a lot of ideas going on. So if you have ideas, if you have questions, if you have something that you would like to see us do, let me know. Again, send it to pops@discoverworld.com, because we got a lot of things we want to get done before Pops comes back. And as of right now, we're still thinking that's going to be in the fall.
Yeah, sometime around maybe Halloween. It'll be perfect timing.
Have our another pumpkin carving contest. Well, good deal. Dr. Joe, thank you so much for doing this again. We appreciate these updates and appreciate you taking the time to educate us on this amazing fossil and the work that you guys are doing, and then sharing the work of your partners as well. So it's been fantastic, and really appreciate it. And we look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, thanks for all the great questions, everybody. Please send more.
All right. Thank you.